Well, while I was in Greece, I did the morning show for a while, and the Good Morning Iraklian, I was at Iraklian Air Station. The Good Morning Iraklian started off as a calm, matter-of-fact Good Morning Iraklian, but as the program developed and got wilder and wilder, the Good Morning Iraklian got wilder and wilder. So when I went to Vietnam, Good Morning Iraklian became Good Morning Vietnam. And when I left Vietnam, the fellow who took over the morning show from me kept that same sign on and the same shout, and it became a tradition with each subsequent morning man until we left Vietnam. So I'll have a man say to me, "Oh, yeah, I used to listen to you every morning." "Oh, really? When were you there?" "Oh, I was there at 69, 70. Well, I was there in 65 and 66. But what they remember hearing is that Good Morning Vietnam.
Now, you gave your superiors some good-natured ribbing, or maybe it wasn't so good-natured.
Well, it started off being semi-biographical. But by the time Hollywood got through with it and added in all of their imagination and exaggeration, by that time, if I had done half the things that Robin did in that film, I'd still be in Leavenworth instead of Virginia. A lot of Hollywood exaggeration in there.
So, what was he like as a person? Did you get a chance to interact with him and know him?
No. The director, Barry Levinson, when he took over the film, he had it in his mind that if Robin and I had met, he would start being an intuitive mimic. He would start to do an imitation of me, which would change his characterization. So Levinson deliberately kept us apart, and we didn't meet until the film premiered in New York, and Robin and I shook hands finally, and he said, "Well, I'm glad to finally meet you," and I said, "Well, I'm glad to finally meet me too," and we got along fine after that.
How did it come about? Now, you started writing a screenplay, or?
Well, in 1979, MASH was number one in the ratings. WKRP in Cincinnati was very popular. I figured if you put them together, you had Armed Forces Radio. So I did a treatment for a TV comedy series called Good Morning Vietnam. I guess it was too close in time in 1979 because nobody believed you could do a comedy about Vietnam. I'd say, "Oh, really? Well, what about MASH? What about Hogan's Heroes? What about McHale's Navy? Oh, well, that was World War II and Korea. We're talking about Vietnam. You can't do comedy about Vietnam." "Why not?" "Well, it's war. There's nothing funny about war." You ever hear of Hogan's Heroes, McHale's Navy, MASH? Mm-hmm. And it just did not compute for them. So Robin and his business manager bought an option on it. And they decided that it would be good to do a movie. And so they, every year, would renew the option. And about 4 years later, they called me up one day and said, "Oh, we've decided to go into production. But we're going to have to change the whole thing." So I went out to California and spent a week there telling them everything I could remember happening to me in Vietnam. They'd say things like, "Oh, really? Well, we'll have to use that in the movie. That's an excellent incident. Of course, we'll have to change it totally." And one of the things I used to do when I was on the college lecture circuit, I would read a scene from the very first draft of the script, then where Cronauer went on the air, and then I'd read the final script after 5 versions, and then I'd show what Robin did with it, which bore no relationship to the script at all. What they do is put him down in front of a mock-up of a radio studio, and they'd say, "Okay, go, kid." And 5 or 10 minutes later, they'd stop the cameras and develop the film and pull out all the really good stuff and use it. And that's how it came about.
You started your radio career back as a kid, though, right?
No, I started my television career as a kid. When I was 12 years old, something called the Dumont Television Network. Very few people know about it. But before there was ABC or CBS or NBC, there was Dumont. Alan B. Dumont had a PhD in electrical engineering. He held the patent for a number of radio and television devices, including a television picture tube for a camera. So he, more or less as a experiment in trying to form a network, he developed a small network. I believe it was New York, Philadelphia, might have been Boston, Pittsburgh, Washington, D.C., and I believe Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a kids show that when I was 12 years old, they had a kids show called Happy's Party. Happy was a little hand puppet of a little dog.
Somewhat like Hank Stoll used to do.
Yeah, very much so. Mm-hmm. Only that was a lady by the name of Ida Mae Stilley, who originally was a dental hygienist for the Pittsburgh public schools, and she'd go around to show kids how to brush their teeth and floss and so forth. So when Dumont wanted to do a kids show, they went to Ida Mae. Somehow or another, they found out about her, and she did the program. The problem was she would not have anything like, well, for example, candy, because it's bad for your teeth. Mm-hmm. Oranges she could do. And I did a number of commercials for Florida oranges. So anyway, I started off as a semi-regular playing the piano for other kids to sing and dance on the old television show Happy's Party on Saturday mornings. Then when I was in college at the University of Pittsburgh, I got a radio gig with WCNG in Canonsburg, Pennsylvania. This is true, I swear, a 250-watt daytimer. And I got fired from my first job after a while. But the broadcasting bug bit me.
Adrian Cronauer, my friend, thank you.
John, good to talk to you. Thank you.
Gene thought we would never stop.